Welcome, everyone. I can see many people are joining the line right now. So we will give it a few minutes for more of our attendees to join, and we will be starting the session shortly. Thank you. All right. Again, I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for Max People and Rodney Employment Law session on Safeguard Your Business, Succession Planning Strategies for Organizations. My name is Christina Bartolo, and I am the Training and Development Coordinator at Max People, and I'll be assisting with the production and moderation for today. This session is facilitated by Anna Ali, Senior Director of HR Services at Max People, and Jordan Rodney, VP of Law and HR Services at Max People and founder of Rodney Employment Law. We're thrilled to be here with you today to share our knowledge. Before we get started, we do have a few quick housekeeping items. Today's session will be intended to have a Q&A portion following towards the latter half, so we encourage you to submit your questions at any time using the chat function. I will keep track of these questions and will moderate them at the end. To ensure high quality of the webinar, I ask you to ensure you have strong internet connection. Please close all unnecessary browser pages and apps running in the background on your computer. If you experience any quality issues during the session, please first try to exit and re-enter the live stream via the link that was sent to you when you registered. The webinar today is being recorded and will be available for viewing afterwards. Without further ado, I will pass it over for our facilitators to begin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So happy to see everybody joining. We're very excited about getting started about this topic. I'm going to just test out my slides here. Perfect. So for those of you who have not joined us on previous webinars, my name is Anna Ali. I work for Max People. I'm the Senior Director here at Max People, and we are a HR consulting firm that specializes in providing customized HR consulting solutions to our clients. Our philosophy when it comes to HR and servicing our clients is that you can have it all. So if any of the topics we discussed today are of interest to you, if you have any questions, I'd highly recommend that you reach out to myself or Jordan or a general email that will be shared at the end, and we'll be more than happy to connect and chat and discuss strategies. So without further ado, I'm going to just kickstart our session with a quick agenda or review our agenda today. Today we'll be speaking about an important topic related to succession planning. For those of you who may not have heard of this term, recently in the Global Mail, there was an article that was shared that listed that in 2030, which, it's, seems like a long time from now, but it'll creep up. The last generation of the baby boomer population will be turning 65 years old. So what does that mean for organizations in Canada? That means there will be a large group of talented individuals who have years and years of institutional knowledge that will be transitioning out. So how can we prepare for this? And I know it seems like ways from now, but preparation takes time. And that's where succession planning, retention of key talent comes into play. So today we'll be, again, like I mentioned, chatting about succession planning. What is it? How do we go about the succession planning process? So some tips and tricks and best practices around that. And then at the end of the session, Jordan and I will be sharing some recent examples and success stories that we work with clients. So if any of that resonates with you, please reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to have an initial discussion to help you through this.
And can I just say one thing, Anna, that thinking about this topic, what's top of mind for me is the current playoff series with the Toronto Maple Leafs and Boston Bruins. as a diehard Toronto Maple Leaf fan. It's interesting. The Toronto Maple Leafs have had a strategy for the last 10 years where they've won a total of one playoff round, despite having, talented individuals. The Boston Bruins, on the other hand, have lost 3 of their 5 best players in the last year, but have this long-term culture of success that they've been able to sustain over time. And when we talk about succession planning today, it's not about putting together a policy or helping you with an HR issue. It's really that higher level stuff that's going to be sustained over time, really where everyone wins. So I want you to keep that in mind, the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Boston Bruins, and how Toronto's likely going to have to dismantle everything, and the Boston Bruins will just consistently keep going as they have, because they've taken the time to do this properly.
Amazing. I appreciate the sports.
It's on my mind. It's on my mind.
That's fine. I'm sure that resonates with certain folks in the audience. And to Jordan's point, the succession planning piece is very strategic, and it's although there are tactical elements of it, it almost you need to take a step back and really realize the short-term and long-term needs of your organization, and are we prepared for success? So do we have the right players in the right seats, and which direction are we going in? So, sorry about that. I think we just skipped ahead. So why do we succession plan? I would say, like we mentioned earlier, there's definitely a huge need when you look at the demographics. You may be experiencing that in your organizations right now, where key individuals who helped kind of grow the business, and we see this a lot with small to medium-sized businesses, are close to an age where they may be transitioning out, and all the best, they deserve it. And we always want to make sure that those transitions are done in a respectful way. But what's next? Who's taking over, right? And if we are missing that layer of middle management, or the next, future generation of leaders in your organization, that can cause a real problem. And unfortunately, these are not overnight solutions. These take years and years of planning, development, and investment in your current team. So there's definitely a huge advantage in growing your talent organically. When it comes from a costing perspective and a retention perspective. We will get into this later on, where when you look at succession planning, the biggest question that we get from organization is, do we build internally or do we go externally and recruit somebody? The building internally definitely increases with employee engagement. It shows employees that there's a career for them. So it's a key retention strategy for your newer developing leaders. There's definitely less downtime, because when you take key individuals and cross-train them and provide them with the knowledge, they're able to step in and step out of a position or a department very easily. And there is a definite tie between career development and training and employee engagement. So when employees feel that there's a sincere effort in making sure that they have a long-term career with the company, and this is not a revolving door, they're more likely to stick around, and it's a retention strategy for many organizations. So let's take a step back. Let's look at, I would say, the textbook definition of succession planning. What is it? So succession planning is a process of identifying critical positions, and we always bold critical positions, because that means different things for different organizations within your organization, and developing action plans for individuals to assume those positions. So based on that, you can see there's a strategic piece here where you have to take a step back and say, what's our goal? Where are we going in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years? And what are going to be the critical positions that are going to get us that success? Then there's a tactical piece. Okay, do we have internal players that can step in? Yes, no. If it's yes, how are we going to make sure that they get there? If it's no, what's our external recruitment strategy? So there's 2 pieces to this, and this is where we always make sure that when we partner with our clients, we have almost that strat planning session, and then get into more tactical pieces like a talent review, which Jordan will be touching upon later today.
Thanks, Anna. I'll just talk very briefly about the importance of aligning with organizational goals, and because winning companies have the right people with the right capabilities focused on the right priorities. So when we talk about these 3 strat planning questions, we're not talking about capital expenditures. We're not talking about technology. We're not talking about sales and marketing or finance. We're talking about people. So this is the people aspect of your strategy. And you have to ask yourself, much like what Anna just said, where is the business today? Where is the business now in terms of talent? Where does the business want to go? And how will the business get there? So I want to bring you back to the book Good to Great and the author Jim Collins, because in that book, Collins talks about, and you've all heard this expression, getting the right people on the bus. So that's important. You got to get the right people on the bus. You got to have invested employees. But Jim Collins, the great author, leadership guy, goes one step further and says they have to be sitting on the bus in the right seats. Mm-hmm. That's the key. They have to be sitting in the right seats. And back to my hockey analogy, very briefly, the Leafs have talented players. They just don't seem to be fit for the playoffs. So they're on the bus, they're driving in the right direction, but they're not sitting in the right seats. That's why they're going to have to make wholesale changes, and it's no different for organizations. So I want to move on to the next slide, thinking about the alignment to organizational goals. Before I pass it back to Anna, just briefly talk about what are some of the key elements of succession planning. So the first thing is there's an assessment. There's an assessment stage. In the assessment stage, you have to identify the positions that are needed to support the business, along with the competencies, the behaviors, and the skills needed for those roles. The next thing you need to do is you need to look at your current candidates, your current high potential employees, and you need to select those competencies that the individual in your company will need to have to excel in the role. Now you're moving into the evaluation piece. So once you've identified the positions, you look internally, you see who do we have, then you say what competencies do they have, what do they excel in, what do they need to work at. And then you move into the last stage of development, which is making sure that if they're going to leave the organization, maybe as Anna said, the older 65-year-olds, you have to ensure that all the knowledge is transferred before they depart. And you have to develop a talent pool with a very targeted strategy. So this is not something you can do in a very unstructured way. And Anna will give some great examples of where we've done that. But it's targeted career strategies that you have to think about. And obviously you need to get the commitment.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to add to this is where I see sometimes, again, more small to medium-sized businesses getting stuck is they get stuck on the people. And I always have to tell owners, listen, I know you love Anna, she's great, but you got to take a step back and think about what's right for the business. And I think that comes innately when you have a tight-knit team and you've seen this person grow, and maybe this was their first real job and they've kind of grown up with the business. You almost have to remove yourself and look at it from a more strategic, take a step back. What's the need for the business? Anna would be great, but is Anna going to be the one that's going to get us to our 5-year target, right? So I think that's another very common pitfall for a lot of owners, small to medium-sized businesses, where we do need to kind of take a step back and look at the position, not the people, and then look, do we have the people to match those positions? Any other things to add to that? Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I want to say is when you talk about succession planning, one of the key things to keep in mind is, and it goes back to what I said earlier about alignment to organizational goals. Think of this quote in the context of succession planning. Planning your people strategy is not about current decisions. It's about the present impact of future decisions. Mm-hmm. So you have to actually be thinking 1, 3, 5 years down the road in terms of your people. And that's how you want to approach succession planning. And it's not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And to all the pieces that Jordan has already discussed, there are 2 strategies that we will be doing a review of. Again, given our time, so it's going to be a very high level review. But if any one of those strategies, which is a talent review or a 9-box model, resonates with you, I'd encourage you to reach out to either one of us or a general email that will be shared at the end to discuss that further. Because to Jordan's point, this is a structured approach. that takes not only senior leadership buy-in, but your next level down as well. And, from some of the examples I'll be sharing with you, for many clients, we've been doing work for 12, 18 months, 2-year plan to understand where are we at and how are we developing our leaders. When we talk about how do we succession plan, in addition to identifying where we need to be, do we have the right players, there are several pieces tied to the HR framework that matter here, such as performance reviews, right? Are we making sure that we're evaluating people and they understand what their current status is with the company? And have we asked them where they want to be? Do they want to lead people? Do they want more depth in their role? Do they want to change careers? Is there a skill that they want to be developing? So having those coaching and developing conversations are almost critical for us to be able to come to the table and talk about our people. Many a times I've asked leaders, hey, does this individual even want to manage a team? And it's like, well, we never asked. It's like, well, we got to start doing that. Like that's the groundwork that needs to go into succession planning, is getting to know your folks, getting to know where they stand, what their aspirations are. Do they want to stay within this department? Do they have other aspirations? And how are they like when you look at their performance? If there's key fundamental pieces missing in their performance, that needs to be addressed first before any promotions, development, or coaching opportunities get taken place. Anything else you'd like to add to this one, Jordan, or could we move over to
No,
the
we
next
can
slide?
keep moving on here.
Moving on, I know we are
Get to some questions.
Yeah, Preston, I do want to open it up. So when we look at identifying short-term and long-term critical positions, I know we mentioned this a few times, the criteria for doing this is looking at not only your strategic outlook, but also looking at what would be the operational impact of this. Do we currently have the talent in-house? And if we don't, when we're looking externally, is it because it's a unique skill or knowledge piece that we don't currently have? Or is it because we want to actually gain a competitive advantage? And this happens quite frequently in smaller niche industries where we want to look externally. Hey, we need more, diverse talent or diverse thought. Also looking at cross-functional collaboration. When we're looking at short-term and long-term critical positions, how can we make sure that our teams are agile and that we're not operating in silos? Future readiness. So looking at leaders and understanding what their future plans are. Is the industry evolving? What kind of positions can we foresee with the new, I wouldn't even say new now, AI and AI's integration into the workforce? How is that going to impact your business in the next 5 to 7 years? And are we building our team currently for that growth or that knowledge, or do we need to look externally for that? Okay. The criteria for assessing successors. And this is, I would say, similar to how we would be doing a performance review, but there is a added layer here because you want to make sure that this is your top tier. Like these are your A players that are not only ready from a technical competence, but also from a leadership competence as well. And many a times when we step into situations like this with our clients, a lot of organic talent has been groomed internally because of their technical competencies, but very few and very seldom do they get put through any sort of people leadership, management, coaching, training. They're kind of just thrown into the situation that says, hey, manage a team. And, some of them grasp that concept and are able, because of high IQ or, they're able to manage their teams effectively. Others struggle, right? So it's important when you're looking at identifying talent for potential succession planning discussions or as your potential successors, that you're looking at not only technical competencies, but also leadership, such as what are their leadership potential? Are they able to think strategically? Do they have the industry and technical expertise? Are they personally interested in the growth and the success of the business? What is their willingness or motivation to learn? Is there a fit with your organization culture and values? I would say that's paramount. That's very critical, especially because your values drive your decision making. Do they show initiative with new challenges, new projects? Are they able to train and mentor others? And are they well respected in the organization? And are they able to gain stakeholder alignment? So are they able to negotiate, influence decision makers in the organization?
That's a pretty. That's a
unicorn right there.
That's a tough list to find people who.
Yeah.
And so when you think about this list, Anna, one of the things If you can just change the slide there, Anna. One of the things that you might want to think about, and Anna, you touched on this in the short and long term, is, do you develop people internally or do you go out and build from the outside? And this is a question that a lot of organizations are faced with. Here's some of the factors that you want to think about in this consideration. One is, what's the strategy? What is the strategy, and how close are you to achieving that strategy? The available resources. Let's say you're looking for certain positions that are really hard to find in the external marketplace. That's a factor that you'd want to maybe develop people internally. Time sensitivity. If you only have a 2-year window to get to the place that you need to, you might not have the time to train internally. You might have to go outside and resource someone. Cost. What is your financial situation, and how does this factor in? Cultural fit. Again, I'm sorry to pick on my beloved hockey team, but who cares about the regular season when you don't perform in the playoffs? The regular season becomes largely meaningless. So that's the cultural, like when the goings get tough and when things get tough, that's when you have to shine. Anna talked about competitive advantage, obviously retention and loyalty. If I went and said to Anna, I don't think you can be a senior director, we're going to hire a senior director, I don't know how Anna would respond to that. So you have to look at the loyalty and retention of your own staff. So there's a lot of factors, including legal considerations, that you might want to think about for buying and building. So keep those in mind as we move forward. What we want to talk about now is we want to talk about the actual talent review, which Anna talked about. And Anna, I'll encourage you to jump in, to add anything here. But really, the talent review, which is a very specific methodology, which we're going to talk about in the next 10 to 12 minutes, it's based on the philosophy that leaders are built, not born. And there's things that an organization can do to develop leaders. And people ask me all the time, Jordan, do you think this person's performance can turn around? And I give the same answer, and it's from the heart, and it's from 25 years of experience. I wouldn't be in this business if I didn't think people can change and improve. I think about my own development over, early in my career. I'm still the same person, but you learn to make choices and you develop, and it's done through a whole host of different things. So how can you as an organization develop leaders? One, by demonstrating values, by innovative ways to retain and attract talent, making sure that your staff have very meaningful work experiences, developing, seeding the organization with, future leaders, always thinking about those future leaders, upgrading the talent pool. With all due respect to anyone who's ever stepped through the door of Max People since we started, our level of excellence is way higher than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So to be excellent today is not the same as it was 5 and 10 years ago. And we're constantly trying to raise the bar. So if we can go to the next slide, Anna, and, the question is why we do it. There's really 3 reasons why we do a talent review. One, it gets everyone on the same page. So what you're doing is you're actually looking and assessing your talent with multiple leaders in your organization. And what that does is it gives you a calibration. So if you think about a kid in high school, getting a straight A average and then going to university and getting the professors around the table and comparing students in similar levels, that's what a talent review does. You're getting everyone, all the leaders on the same page. You're also getting a snapshot of what's the talent you have and what are the gaps in talent. And it really, it spotlights the stars of your business and also the strugglers. Because Anna might have a staff member that she thinks is fantastic, but myself and another leader think they're ordinary. But if Anna and I get in a room and we do a formal talent review process, then we're going to, through debate and dialogue and a facilitation, we're going to get on the same page of, okay, we all agree based on feedback of all the leaders, these individuals are our stars. These are our key contributors. And these are our strugglers. So that's a great aspect of it. And then by doing a talent review, it helps make stuff happen. It kind of formalizes the development process in your organization. So what does it look like in a nutshell? This is kind of the key slide here, showing you what the talent review looks like. Can we go just to show, and then we'll, yeah, so, go back one. So basically you're assessing two things in the talent review. On the bottom axis, you're assessing performance or results. And on the left-hand side, you're assessing potential, the individual's ability to get to the next level. So starting from the top right-hand corner, you have the star. That's the person who's high performance, high potential. The middle person is kind of that, solid, that third line hockey player, solid performance, solid potential, nothing extraordinary. And then in the bottom left, you have the person who's at risk, and you might want to exit them from the business. They're low performance, low potential. And you might also want to substitute for potential values or behaviors. And I know you've done that in your own talent reviews, where you're looking at values on one axis, performance or results on the other, and then you use potential as a tiebreaker. But if you think about this, everyone's in the room, you're evaluating your staff, and you're basically plotting them on this box as to where they land. And there's a lot of questions about, like, do you want to communicate that to your staff? Is this only, I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, Anna. Is this something that would only be kept by the management of an organization internally, so they know who their stars and average performers and below average? Or is it your view, or how would you determine whether to say to a client, you should actually tell people this is how the organization sees you?
So for organizations that have gone through this process, I would say definitely the individual themselves needs to know where they are in this process. And this process ideally should be done before performance reviews, right? Because it informs the performance review process. I don't think it's appropriate for them to know where others on their team stand. One other piece that also gets documented in this process, which I find helpful with some of my clients who are in competitive industries, is flight risk, right? That's an important one, because it's important to document, hey, who's a flight risk here and for what reason, and to make sure that we're addressing that as well. So I would say definitely letting the individual know where they stand, but in the grand scheme of things, but probably not appropriate to share others.
So it's interesting. Anna talked about getting this information, doing a talent review to inform you in a performance management discussion. So you have your own assessment of the individual along with the organization's assessment, and then you can kind of calibrate it. I've definitely seen it done that way, but I've also seen it done. There's one client in mind that we've been working with for many years, where when we first started working with them, it's kind of like, you got to do check-ins with your people every week. And it's kind of like, why would we speak to our people? Fast forward 10 years, Anna, they have a very structured, formal talent review, talent development process. What happens there is the managers do performance reviews of their individual staff members. Then that result goes to a talent review with all the leaders, and there's a bit of a calibration. And then the manager goes back to the individual and says, originally you were rated here. In fact, you're rated here. And it might be higher, it might be lower, it might be exactly where the manager sees them. Right. So I've seen it done both ways. But again, why do we do this? We do it because it gets the right people in the right place. Employees demand it. Employees have choices today. The best way that you can make those choices for employees really difficult is to continue developing them. There's a new advisor on our team. Within her first 2 weeks, she was doing terminations for our clients. And she said to me, I was really nervous before. And I'm like, how many terminations have you done in your career? And she said, none. And I said, well, you should be nervous, because I've done hundreds and I still feel a bit uneasy before termination. So it's employees demand it, and your values in your organization should demand it. So maybe, Anna, we can talk about, maybe you can touch on the next slide some of the strategies to groom and develop using this wonderful slide. And if anyone has any questions about the 9-box model, now would be the time to do that. We'll move on one more slide here, Anna, and we'll talk about maybe you can touch on some of these development strategies and how they need to vary and what you've done with some of our clients.
Right. I would say one other piece I would add to the talent review, which seems a bit trivial, but I've seen light bulbs and aha moments when we put everything on a board, and it actually your people on a flip chart paper or on a slide deck.
Yeah.
There's something to be said there. I think that is valuable because many organizations have never done that type of exercise, and when they see their people kind of in the quadrants, they're like, oh, okay, we see a big gap here, or there's a big gap here, right? If there's not many folks in that top tier, there's an issue, right? If your B players are kind of consuming your masses, there's an issue there as well. So I do think there's.
And sorry to interrupt, but how many times have you spoken to a client and you've asked the question, how well do you know your people? And they're like, we know them exceptionally well. But then when you ask another leader, it's like, oh, that person's like a below average performer.
Exactly.
I can't stress enough what Anna just said. You got to get these people in a room. I mean, you could do it virtually. It's far better in person.
Oh, yeah.
You have to get them to debate against each other, to really advocate for their people and to calibrate. That's the whole point of, again, Anna might see someone in a certain way and I might see them in a different way. So how do we align on where this person actually is relative to other people at that level? And by the way, you can do this. You know, I've had pushback saying, well, how can you compare a marketing coordinator to an HR coordinator? Well, very easily. They're at a coordinator level. One is performing marketing, one is performing HR, and you're assessing performance and potential. And you can do that through the dialogue with both parties. Yeah. So
fair. When it comes to strategies for development, so let's say we've done a talent review. What's next, right? So what comes out of that for each employee is a specific development goal or goals or a development action plan, as we like to call it. It could be a mix of strategies. So we've listed some here on the slide, as you can see. We would, let's say it's a skill piece. So let's say it's a skill or competency that they need to develop in their job. We would give them any, maybe exposure to current opportunities or current challenges that like projects that they're currently working on, or special assignments. So it could be cross-functional assignments that they can partner up with other team members on. Ongoing feedback. This could include like a 360. That's something our firm specializes in. So if you have a manager that's there's some blind spots there or some lack of self-awareness, maybe, working with a 360 or a management coach would be beneficial for them. Also training and I would say reading, just upgrading their skills as it relates to their job or maybe their profession, making sure things like AI, are we ahead of the game? What kind of tools can we utilize? So developing a training and learning plan for them may be helpful as well. It needs to be a variety of approaches, I would say. So it should be on-the-job learning, some academic type of training, feedback, opportunities for coaching with a senior leader or a mentor. And also there needs to be some sort of criteria for success. How are you doing against this, right? So one thing that I'm a high advocate for when it comes to performance reviews is fine, you get a rating, I'm a satisfactory employee. What's next? What's my action plan, right? There needs to be a development action plan put into place, and we need to hold some level of accountability to the manager in making sure that they're providing the employee with the resources and tools and coaching needed to implement that development action plan, but also that there's some sort of check-in. It may be monthly. If that seems like overkill, we may do something quarterly. Hey, how are you doing against that plan? So we're measuring success. And like we highlighted at the bottom here, it's important that when we're implementing a strategy around grooming our leaders, we're monitoring it, and we may need to adjust it based on feedback, right? So just be open to that as well.
And just one point I want to stress. I just actually had this conversation recently with someone. If your manager is not doing their job in terms of development planning, and you as an individual, like I was told very early in my career, if you don't manage your career will manage you. Yeah. So if you're not getting what you need from your leader, it's incumbent upon you as a future leader to push it. And I want to stress also that we're not talking about always upward mobility.
Yes.
We're talking about lateral
Depth,
experiences. We're not talking about like all director levels and VP levels.
Yeah.
We're talking about like getting a vast experience both laterally and horizontally.
Yeah.
So,
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, Jordan, because many times I get challenged by clients and leaders that say, hey, Anna doesn't want to manage people. She just wants to be really good at what she does, like a subject matter expertise. Right. So how do we
there's nothing wrong with that.
How do we motivate this individual? How do we reward them? But they don't want to be doing a team. And then the other side is, how do we keep our B players engaged? Because everybody can't be an A player. Everybody cannot be a director in a company. So how do we keep those folks engaged and, making sure that they see a long-term future with the company, but that they're also performing to the best of their ability as well.
Yeah.
So I see that we have some questions coming in, which is great.
I just, go ahead. You go ahead.
I just wanted to wrap up with some final thoughts, but again, being mindful of time because I see a few questions. Some just recent examples that I'd like to share with the team of how we've helped our clients with succession planning, all very different. So one traditional example I could think of was, a family-owned business. There's a lack of middle management. Some key subject matter experts are retiring in the next 3 to 5 years. What we're doing with that team right now is a talent review of those departments and understanding who could be the second in command for these folks that are retiring in the next 3 to 5 years, and developing career transition plans for them. So making sure that the folks that are transitioning out are doing the knowledge transfer to the second in commands, and how are we making sure that those individuals are getting ready for their future jobs at this organization. Another one, which is a little bit of a different situation, but had a not-for-profit client who was interested in doing a little bit of contingency planning. So they had, concerns around retention of the team. So they wanted to make sure that if key leaders left tomorrow, how do we make sure that our organization can sustain itself? So is there a readiness plan in action? Who would be the next in command if this individual left? Where are, simple things like standard operating procedures, passwords, where's all that stuff? So making sure that we were documenting all that and getting the organization ready for that. And then the third example is another client of ours in the food distribution industry, where it's husband and wife ready to kind of retire and move on to the next exciting chapter of their life. How do we identify internal leaders to take over? So that was more of a 2-year process with them, where they identified 2 leaders internally who were interested in transitioning into more of a ownership position, and we help with that transition as well. So very interesting case studies. If this resonates with any one of you or feels like, okay, that sounds like us and the place that we're in right now, please do reach out to us, and we'd love to chat further.
And getting to Anne-Marie's questions. Anne-Marie, it's a great question. I wonder if you're the Anne-Marie that I know, which would be amazing because I haven't heard your name in many years. But if you are, I'm thrilled that you attended today. So it's so interesting what you talked about, this 4x1 assessment tool. There's many ways that you can do a talent review, and we're suggesting the 9-box model. We actually have a customized talent review process that we use at Max People based on the 9-box model, but I would say far simpler for our organizations. But it's so interesting what you said here. You said it has to be about mindset change and facilitated discussions. Unless an organization is ready to do this, it's not going to get the return that you want it to get. Having said that, when this is done well, and we're the ones that are doing the facilitation, it's like a symphony that is operating on all cylinders. And I got to tell you, it's very easy to do this for the first couple of years, because it's very easy to kind of figure out who are your key people. But once you get into a rhythm, like a symphony kind of rhythm, it becomes very difficult to really get people in that top category, figure out who the strugglers are, because the bar has been raised so much. But the bottom line, Anne-Marie, is I totally agree that it's about mindset change with your people. As far as your second question here, in terms of the development strategies, most of your learning, I would say 70%, to use your numbers here, happens on the job. It's experiential learning. 20% would be learning through interactions and feedback from others, and then 10% would be the traditional kind of training. But most learning happens in the classroom. Look, I just told Anna the story early in my career. Oh, you are? Well, nice to have you, Anne-Marie. I recognized your name. I was wanting to get experience in collective bargaining. I had been at the table doing collective bargaining negotiations, but never as a chief spokesperson. This is about 15 years ago, 18 years ago. So what did Maple Leaf Foods do? They sent me to Moncton, New Brunswick for 3 weeks to shadow a guy who had done over 100 sets of negotiations. Still remember that experience today. And I came back and led about 12 sets of negotiations on my own. So it was very, very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah, and I think the one caveat to this would be with the mix, so the 70, 20, 10, also depends on whether it's a new grad, right? So new graduates coming straight out of school, if this is their first full-time role, there may be a heavier push on formal training versus experiential. So I think it's a bit nuanced depending on your career level and the industry. But what you laid out here that seems aligned with what our strategy would be when it comes to learning and development and career development.
And I think I actually said the wrong point. I got excited about this. Most of the learning does not happen in the classroom. To clarify, it's experiential.
Yes.
It happens on the job.
Yes.
Through on the job experience, not in the classroom. I think I said in the classroom.
On the job does not mean sink or swim. That's where I get challenged. Well, we'll just get this individual started and they'll figure it out. On the job, it still needs there needs to be some planning and thought put into it. Of okay, if this person wants to get exposure to collective bargaining, how do we make sure they get there? But sink or swim rarely ever works. So it's more of an old school mindset when it comes to training.
So we have about 4 minutes left. We're happy to stay on for a couple more minutes, but are there any other questions? Christina, is there any questions that have come in from the audience, not in the chat, that you can raise to us? And then we'll kind of give you our final thoughts. So another question that's come in here from the audience, and I'll let Anna take a stab at it, is how can you ensure a smooth transition of staff into key roles within your organization? I guess, what are some kind of best practices on that,
simple
Anna?
terms, I would say preparation and communication. That's how I would say.
Can't be said any less than that.
Can't give my secret formula away, but I would say it's prepare, and communicate. Get not only the folks stepping into the positions ready, but also others around them. So I would say it takes time, it takes effort. It is not a drop the ball overnight fix. So if you are, or maybe your team is in a situation where you're kind of looking at the next 3 to 5 years and figuring out like who's next here and how are we going to be managing this place, call us. Like it takes time, and there is a strategy around addressing that.
And I just want to end, Anna, with one kind of, again, personal anecdote that one last personal anecdote is individually within our own organization, we've had a number of people that started as interns, started from, graduated from HR, post-university certificates in HR, and are now in leadership roles in our organization. I would suggest, aside from the culture that we've built, which you've been instrumental and part of, the main reason why we've been able to retain these people and grow them is the succession planning and development process. And look where they are today, right? From students. A last point, another last question here. We have 1 minute left. If you start investing in a succession plan and then they change their mind and no longer want to move to leadership, how would you handle that?
That's a great question. I would say understanding the why behind that. Because if you've had open, honest, and real discussions around what this individual wants to be doing, and now they've changed their kind of outlook or wants, I first want to understand why the change of heart and address that problem first.
Right.
If it's the team, like, hey, I can't manage this team because of XYZ reason, let's try to fix that. or if it's, hey, I don't see myself as a potential leader because I'm lacking these pieces. Well, how can we help you get there?
Right.
So first, understanding the why, and if it's a why that we cannot fix, it's a fair decision, and I'd rather know now than them stepping into the role and not being able to do their job.
But think about COVID. A lot
Yeah.
of people reevaluated their life.
Right.
It gave them a chance to be with their family. Some people didn't like being with their family.
Right.
Some people are like, wow, I got to do a reevaluation here.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to progress. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing.
Right.
So if you think of that happened many times during COVID with many of our clients,
Right.
you have to ask yourself, are you willing to accept that person
Yes.
doing what they're doing today at the same level, not thinking of one up potential or two up potential, at the same level, and you might be very happy.
Right.
They might be very valuable members of your organization.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I see the clock. It's now 11:46. So I'm going to turn it back. So Anna, thank you very much for
Thank you, Jordan. Yes.
that was the fastest webinar of my career. I hope it was beneficial for everyone who called in. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Christina, to close off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jordan and Anna. And we hope you all found this presentation very informative. And thank you to our community for joining us today and asking such great questions. We really appreciate your participation. And as a reminder, a recording of the session and a feedback survey will be made available. And please take a moment to answer, as we really appreciate your opinions. If you would like more information on the topics that we have discussed today, you can check out our resources and our blogs page on our website, or you can reach out to our team at Max People and Rodney Employment Law. Also, please scan the QR code on the screen to download the Leadership Coaching Toolkit. Please keep an eye out for an invitation to our upcoming virtual events. Also, stay connected with us and follow our LinkedIn page to stay up to date with all things HR and employment law. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.